Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Hi everyone, I'm Derek White Sky Cloud from Métis Matters Radio. I'm on Wednesday nights at 5 o'clock. Vancouver Cooperative Radio is an innovative non-profit radio station and recording studio with a mission to produce creative and engaging programming for communities whose voices are unrepresented in the mainstream media. We need your financial support to help us achieve this mission. By donating today, you'll help us to continue providing access to training and equipment for over 300 volunteers who produce over 140 hours of original programming in over 10 languages. We strive to provide programming that does not discriminate against people on the grounds of sex, race, age, class, ability, orientation, or anything else. Since 1975, we have celebrated the rich cultural diversity of the Greater Vancouver area through our arts, our music, and spoken word programming. Donate today by visiting coopradio.org
or calling 604-684-8494.
Are you a renter in Vancouver, wondering how you'll be able to pay rent during the pandemic? Are you worried about rent debt or the possibility you might be evicted from your home? The Vancouver Tenants Union has your back. They have been very busy during the COVID-19 crisis, trying to effect legislative change that protects renters all over the city from rent debt, rent increases, and eviction. Find out how you can be involved by visiting their website at vancouvertenantsunion.ca or send them an email at tenantsunion.yvr@gmail.com.
Hi, I'm Daniel with Health Initiative for Men. You might know us as a hub for sexual health needs in the Davie Village, but did you also know that we have free gear for safer substance use and hormone injections? At HIM, we fill anonymous online orders at supplies.checkhimout.ca. Pick up what you need at the Davie Street Health Center, located on the corner of Davie and Burrard, or your order can be discreetly sent to where you need it. Go to supplies.checkhimout.ca for more details.
And you're listening to GenderQueeries on 100.5 FM, CFRO, Vancouver's Cooperative Radio. And as always, we're broadcasting over the unceded Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories. And this is kind of the third week of Terrible Voice COVID videos. You can kind of hear differences in various interviews, depending on when I recorded them. It's great. I got an email from someone. Someone told me that people who have COVID sound like Jordan Peterson. And I'm like, damn it. They're right. So I apologize if my voice sounded way too much like Jordan Peterson. Coming up in a bit, we're going to have an interview with Keffels, who was swatted and dead-named by London police earlier this week. But first we have a couple pieces from the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. Actually, no audio. I'm just pulling this so I don't get content matched on YouTube. And that was Trial by Fire by Fallen Stars, which is a local band. And joining us now is Jade from the band.
Hello,
Jade,
hello.
Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about the group and your pronouns.
Absolutely. My name is Jade. I go by she, her. Fallen Stars, we are a female-fronted hard rock band, and we're part of the LGBTQ community, and we really thrive and really want to show that you can both love metal and you can still be a part of the queer community. It's just that, there's overlap, and there's a lot of people that love all these different types of music. There's a lot of queer people in the metal community, and the metal community has been so embracive of my transition that I cannot thank them enough. They've been respecting my pronouns ever since, and my new name and everything ever since I changed, and it's been phenomenal. I can't thank the Vancouver metal scene enough.
Right on. And you're going to be at US Pride this weekend, right?
Yeah, we're playing the main stage. We've been doing a little bit of back and forth with New West Pride. We had them involved with our annual music festival, Fallen Fest, a couple months ago, where we had them come and we curated some drag performers for our stage. And then this year, they graciously asked us to perform on the main stage for this year. And we're super excited about it. The lineup is amazing. Our friends of Virago Nation are there. Our friends at Strange Breed are there. Dandy is hosting. Satanics, Carmela Bar, tons of amazing performers from Vancouver. I love it.
Yeah, right on. And I got your press kit, and you have like an amazing photo, the rainbow flag and the Pride Trans flag, and also the smoke generators. That was really, really cool.
Yeah, we shot that in New West actually. We big shout out to Dave Warden. I wanted to find something, a nice middle ground between showcasing, where you can see one photo and you know exactly who we are, what
Yeah.
we're about. There's our alternative side as well as what we like to represent.
Yeah. So your latest album, Execution, that's out. Where can people stream it and
You can
download it?
find it, yeah, you can find it all over the good old socials streaming areas, Apple Music, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. But if you want really to go and have a good experience, go to Bandcamp, Fallen Stars BC. There you can find all of our stuff. You can also find alternative art for our release of Trials, the album, and you can find a bunch of little bonus things that you get when you download it as well. And it's all for free. We want people just to be able to download our music and enjoy it on their way however they want to digest it.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's Jade from Fallen Stars, who will be performing at the New West Pride Festival this weekend. Thanks, Jade.
Bye.
You're listening to GenderQueeries on 100.5 FM CFRO, and joining us now is Susan and Giovanna, who are part of the film When We Arrive as Flowers. And this is going to be at the Vancouver Queer Film Festival this weekend, and starting actually tonight. And you can go and get tickets and everything at outonscreen.com. Can you go ahead and introduce yourselves and tell us your pronouns?
Sure. My name is Giovanna LaBeija. Pronouns are she, her. I am an artist, a dancer, choreographer, poet, and ballroom house member of the House of LaBeija, as the last name insists. Based out of Brooklyn, New York. Been here for about 10 years and have collaborated with the wonderful Susan O'Brien on this fabulous little darling of a seed film, When We Arrive as Flowers, which has now arrived in full bloom and blossom. Take it away, Susie.
The flower puns, they always get me. My name is Susan O'Brien, also go by Susie. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm a director, I'm an art director, I'm a writer, I'm a dancer. I will say jokes and hopefully make you laugh. What else can I do? Can I juggle? No, I can't, but that's me.
Yeah, and this film, I got a chance to watch it. It's visually beautiful, and very poetic as well. I've been watching a bunch of films. This is by far my favorite thing that I've
Thank
seen.
you.
And can you tell us a little about the art style? And
well, do we want to talk about the very beginnings with this project and the idea of flowers? Because that really is the overarching theme of the journey of a flower from the seeds to its growth to its final bloom. And so we were looking, of course, Giovanna wrote this beautiful, beautiful poem. And when we were talking about the poetry of it, it's so rich in its visuals that it just lends itself perfectly to film as a medium. But we were looking just at the poetry of the words and how can we symbolically show that on screen. And you think of the flowers and you think of all the colors. And so you think of the dresses at the end that she's wearing. And we knew immediately that we wanted to film in really lush gardens and capture that whole aesthetic.
Oh yeah, it's interesting that one of the first questions you ask is about like the art and the visual aesthetic of the film, because that is one of the main reasons that I wanted to work with Susie to create this. As a choreographer, as a visual artist myself, and a writer, my brain works in a lot of different directions depending on the idea I am trying to express. And for this film, I knew what the movement felt like. I knew the music I was hearing. I knew the piece that I wanted to write for it. But for whatever reason, I could not see scenes. I couldn't storyboard it. There was no narrative other than the fact that it was my narrative. But that might have made it harder for me to sort of translate that into something other than just a memory or just my own artistic expression, which is why I really appreciate, as Susie was saying, all these different elements that create really what is a collage of a film that it just truly comes from the collaborative efforts of her taking my movement, my ideas, my story, and translating it into what you see on screen.
Mm-hmm. And when we were storyboarding the project too, we actually recorded Giovanna saying the poem pretty early on in the stages. That was like one of the first things that we did with this project. And so when we were storyboarding, it was just listening to her speaking these words and forming, your brain naturally is just forming all of these ideas in your head of how can we travel from, you know, the early stages of a seed to then showing her as she's growing and as she's blossoming and she's questioning at, you know, certain phases. And we, you know, kind of strung that together. I just quickly put it into Premiere, and we just kind of like strung out with music how everything was going to play and like what the chapters were going to be with this film. And we took it from there.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a little bit more than putting in a premiere. Maybe a little bit more, but no, this is like a
whipped
super...
it together.
Yeah, it just took us 5 minutes. No, I really,
I wish.
yeah, no, right? I hate doing video editing. I despise it. It just takes so much time. Yeah, you mentioned the transition between the different stages. And one line really stuck out to me. It says, I tried to cry her away. And I thought that was really, really sad and beautiful at the same time.
There's a lot of lines in this. I love hearing the feedback from people about what are the lines that stick out to them. And yeah, I mean, that I remember writing that section of the poem that accompanies and that you're hearing throughout the film. And I speak for myself and my own gender journey and relationship to my transness and trans identity. There are many a different way I try to avoid the ultimate reality and realization that was like an aha of who I am. Many different methods went into burying that feeling, forgetting that feeling, forgetting, oh, like these visions of who I used to be and having them reoccur. So yeah, that line specifically, it definitely was supposed to hearken to the not so bright moments where you indulge in your own sadness in hoping that is a cathartic experience.
Yeah. And Giovanna, I was on your webpage for your little business there. And I noticed the quote, much of the mythology of the spiritual and religious traditions of the African diaspora contain queer themes, stories, and ideas of gender and sexual identities. I'm wondering, do you have a favorite story?
The one that comes to mind first is within, I will say this is a story that I know to be specific to the Afro-Cuban branch of my religion, or the overall Orisha worship system, which is La Regla de Ochalukumi. The Orisha Ochung, who is the Yoruba goddess of femininity, love, and fertility, among other things. She has a child who is born a boy. His name is Ideu. He sort of represents luck and beauty and just charm. At a certain point in Ideu's life, his life is threatened. And in order to save his life, in order to essentially hide him from the evil that seeks to take him away, they have to disguise him. But that disguise is to say you have to wear a skirt for the rest of your life. You don a sort of new femininity that gives you a sort of double, in that some people say there was sort of effeminate, or he wears a skirt and that represents his relationship to his mother and Ochung. That comes to mind first because it calls up ideas of the power of clothing as a tool of feminization and identity, the ability to shift an old character into a new, as a form of protection, donning femininity onto what was originally assigned male. So that comes to mind first. That's a really good question.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what other projects have you going on?
Oh, Susie, I've been talking a lot.
What other projects are happening right now? I've been writing a lot. I've been working on some short stories, and also I'm a burlesque dancer.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna, plug myself there. Harlow, that is my persona. And just being inspired and going to museums and going to galleries and kind of, I think I'm in the incubation stages right now of my creativity. And I think that part of the process sometimes is overlooked, and you get panic as an artist because you're like, wait a second, I should be doing something right now. It's nice to, be, listening to music in my room and laying down and, thinking about, having an existential crisis and writing poetry about it. And then you're like, oh, wait, everybody else is moving. But I think it's so important to have that part of the process where you can sit with yourself and you can check in with yourself again and see what's inspiring you and igniting that passion. And so I'm currently in that stage right now for a lot of development of future projects.
To be honest, the film is a major priority. Being a member of being a member of the House of La Beja, for the amount of time I have been, I spend a lot of time like preparing for performances with them, and just like it's a communal effort to keep a house together. So we're constantly like having meetings with each other, welcoming in new members who we meet in off the street and just see potential in or express interest in us. And of course, the house is having an interesting renaissance moment of its own. Of course, Beyonce like just shouted us out on her song. The house was just in Tribeca with our own film. So we're sort of riding the shockwaves of that. And then, this film is a perfect representation of just like where I am in my career as an artist. I am in like overdrive mode in producing just visual art. I have a collection of poems that I'm going to be putting out very, very soon, but I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm one of those superstitious gals. So I'm trying to flood the streets, mama. You're never going to get enough of me. You're going to be sick of hearing my name.
I can't wait. I know that you're superstitious, but I can't wait to read more of your poetry because I'm just so in love with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can people follow you? What's your socials?
You can follow me at La Diovanna. That's LADIOVANNA everywhere. Yeah. And then my small online business, which you better get in on it real quick because she's going to be going on a hiatus as I focus on like festival circuit with the film. And I don't want to be overwhelmed because I run her alone. But if you want to find her, it's La Boti Muñequita. I'll spell that LABOTIMUNEQUITA.com. That's really long, but I promise you'll find it on my Instagram, which is much shorter. And there's lots of treats on there. I make handmade incense blends and perfumes and give spiritual consultations. It's a whole other side of me. Well, not really. If you watch the film, you'll see that spirituality runs through everything that I do.
Absolutely. And you can follow me at Red Beret Productions. I am not on brand today. Normally I wear a red beret. It is very hot out. And so we are Sans Red Beret. And also I would suggest following our executive producer, Alexandra Billings, as well. So just wanted to shout her out real quick.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I didn't realize. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So that was Susan and Adivana. And their film, When We Arrive as Flowers, is going to be part of In the Morning at the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. That starts tonight. Basically, it's virtual, so you could air it till August 21st. Tickets are as low as $5. They're doing a big push for accessibility in terms of finances. And you can get them at outonscreen.com. And if ticket options are inaccessible to you or you need some other assistance in purchasing a ticket, they ask that you email them at boxoffice@outonscreen.com. And you're listening to Gender Queries on 100.5 FM CFRO, Vancouver's Cooperative Radio. And joining us now is TJ Cuthand. TJ, go ahead, introduce yourself. Let us know your pronouns and tell us a little bit about your film that's going to be happening at the Vancouver Queer Film Festival.
Yeah, hi. I'm TJ Cuthand. Pronouns are he, him, and my film is called 13 Eggs, and it's basically a documentary about the 4 years I spent trying to make a baby and failing, and all the feelings around that, and yeah, and also being like a single person trying to start a family is difficult, so it was about that too.
Yeah. And so it's going to be part of the VQFF has a bunch of like shorts wrapped up into this one piece called Two Spirit and Indigiqueer Cinema, Sovereign Bodies. And that's going to be starting to be aired online at August 11th to August 21st. And you can get tickets on outonscreen.com. So can you tell us a little bit more about the movie?
Sure. Yeah. So it's shot in like video and Super 8. And basically when I started trying to get eggs retrieved for like my fertility process, I started taking footage of myself just sort of talking about the process and what it felt like. And then there's like this long pause before I finished filming, and I wanted to talk about sort of like the sort of what happened in the end, which was that I don't know, I guess I shouldn't spoil the film, but like basically I don't have children. I still don't have children. It didn't work, but yeah, it made me think a lot of different things about myself and fertility and what it means to start a family. And I had a friend I was who was donating sperm, and so there's that whole thing of like approaching your friend and being like, would you donate sperm? And yeah, there's a lot in there. And also I think the end, it kind of got rushed because the pandemic was happening, and so the fertility clinics were shut down for part of that. And so a lot of it seemed to be like there's this time pressure for like so much of it because of my age and the age of the eggs, and then the pandemic happening. So yeah.
Yeah, and I understand you spent a fair bit of money out of pocket. Do you want to talk a little bit about how queer and trans couples and queer and trans people are affected differently than your usual straight couple when it comes to fertility treatments in Ontario?
Yeah, I mean, I paid for it out of pocket. Like, I think there's certain ways you can get your funding covered, but I wasn't eligible for that. And I don't know how far I would have been able to get either, because I would have had to find a surrogate, which is like a whole other huge amount of money, like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. But even like with what I was doing, which was retrieving eggs and then fertilizing them and then seeing how far they went, which was not far enough. There was still like, I think it was between like $16,000 and $20,000 worth of like fertility treatments to do. And like each shot, like I did a shot in the butt like every morning for 2 weeks, and each shot was like $600. So it was like, yeah, it adds up really fast. And yeah.
Yeah, I noticed one line in the documentary. It was grieving people who never were is harder than it seems. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess just that I don't know. I guess it's hard to start from scratch with a person,
Yeah.
like literally like with like an egg and a sperm and all that. And then just the fact that like also my uterus doesn't work, so there was like it wasn't as easy as like just going to find like a sperm donor and like getting pregnant. Like it was also having to get eggs retrieved and then like artificially inseminated and then find someone who would carry them. And yeah, so it's a lot of process and it's a lot of work, and it's emotionally very difficult too, because the hormones, like they're hormones, so they do all kinds
Right.
of weird things to you. Yeah. like emotionally.
Right. No,
Yeah.
certainly. And I know a lot of people who are, going through like fertility treatments, just, even cis straight people, they go a little too much with the hormones are a bit too much for them, and they just end up stopping because of all the emotional stuff. Yeah. Now,
Mhm.
you also talk from like a very indigenous perspective, and I wonder if you can speak to the importance of having children in your culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just because there's been so much work in trying to make sure Indigenous people can't have children. Like, there's, I mean, women are still being sterilized in Saskatchewan against their will,
Right.
and things like that. I mean, I think people like really discourage Indigenous people from having kids. It's part of the genocide that happens, right? It's that like you don't like the dominant society doesn't want Indigenous people having babies. And it was interesting too because like your birth control is paid for by the government when you're Indigenous, but like fertility treatments like those aren't paid for, and your fertility drugs, those aren't paid for. So it's pretty obvious what they're prioritizing.
Yeah, and when it comes to trans people, being forcibly sterilized in order to get identification or whatever, similar experiences.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, that was TJ Cuthand, whose film 13 Eggs is going to be at the Vancouver Queer Film Festival starting August 11th to August 22nd. And for tickets, you can go and get them from outonscreen.com.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Anything else we want to add?
I can't think of anything.
Okay, cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks. It was nice talking.
All right, take care. Bye.
See you.
And you're listening to GenderQueeries on 100.5 FM CFRO, Vancouver's Cooperative Radio. And joining us now is Raven Two Feathers. Raven, go ahead, introduce yourself and tell us your pronouns.
Osio, Scano, Nyawit Scano, Hapmurawe, Itsiaya. Hello, my name is Raven Two Feathers. I am Cherokee, Seneca, Cayuga, and Comanche, coming from Coast Salish Territory, Seattle, and I use he and they.
And so you have a movie that's going to be airing as the part of the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So the film that's screening for me is A Drive to Top Surgery. And so it was originally a 360 video piece that's now been converted into what we call a flat. And so now you can watch it on a flat screen. It's about 11 minutes long, and it's just a sort of one take experience and documentary of my grandma and mom driving me down to top surgery.
Yeah, and that's a pretty exposing personal kind of experience that you're willing to share. Wondering what were you kind of feeling during the drive?
I think first of all was making sure that the camera was actually stuck and wouldn't dislodge when we were driving the entire time. But I think the other things that were going through my head were all of the logistics that were taking place in the background, and just wanting to make sure that everything was going all right for the film. Albeit this idea came out of seeing a lot of top surgery videos where the person would cut as soon as they got in their car, and then they wouldn't start filming till they got to the surgeon's office. And so I was wondering, like, what happens in that transitionary space of driving there, and the anxiousness, or whatever feelings come up. And so my top surgery date was coming up, and I was part of a fellowship that required me to make a film, make a 360 video, and so I chose to document it.
Yeah, and for it, you won the...
I won the Emerging Digital and Interactive Award at Imaginative last year.
Yeah, we're talking about how people cut the camera. And I guess, I don't know, this probably dates me, but when I was coming out and watching all these videos years and years ago, cameras weren't small, so you couldn't just mount a video camera on your dash. But I guess with the 360 cameras, you have kind of a lot of opportunities to incorporate it in things like driving cars and getting camera footage when you otherwise couldn't. Can you speak to, I guess, filmmaking with technology like this? Like, what kind of avenues does it open for you?
Yeah. So I've always spoken about VR and 360 video and any XR content as sort of like a reverse theater in the round that where audience member is immersed in the piece, almost like the reverse version of putting the stage and then audience all around in theater. And so with that, I've been able to almost feel like I am immersing these people who have chosen to view this piece into my world, and they willingly come into that, and it's going to be a full experience. I think with filmmaking and with VR or any cameras in general, there is such a almost a limitless possibility with the number of different options we have for cameras. And so I think that the accessibility of video is incredible nowadays. Like, you know, I'm also going to date myself. I just turned 26 a few days ago. And even then, it's like my generation was jumping from like cassette tapes and various other forms of tapes to DVDs to, you know, just being able to go digital now. Oh, right, VHS too, Betamax, etc. And so I feel like that accessibility, yes, there is the talk about how it can, quote unquote, more access will lead to things becoming more and more diluted. But I think that the accessibility and breaking down those barriers of wealth to create things that you want to create is incredibly necessary for all of society, honestly.
Yeah, and things have become so much more accessible. I mean, you can go buy a pretty decent camera for, not thousands of dollars anymore, right? And it just kind of democratizes filmmaking and bringing out all these experiences.
Yeah.
Do you have any other projects going on?
Oh boy, do I have a lot of projects. There are plenty on the back burner, but the projects that I'm working on right now is a short documentary about an exercise program for Native men and how, of course, it's helped them physically, but also the impact it's had on them emotionally, spiritually, and socially with families, friends, and community, and being able to really tap into who they are and live a good life. And so that film is in post production right now, and fingers crossed will be out in 2023. And I'm so excited to meet the guys again when we go to festivals in each of their hometowns and be able to really spread this idea of, with my transitioning, of what it means to have healthy masculinity, not only for trans folks, but for cis folks as well. It's like almost a realization for them that they don't have to fit into these boxes that society has constructed. So the feature documentary that I'm doing braids 5 different Indigenous folks together, talking about their relation to being outside of the gender binary, but also generally what they've experienced growing up and growing into themselves. And so that sort of forms an experimental poetic vision of the land, the water, and these people talking with one another. And from that, revealing a fully lived life.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. Do you think there's more ability for people to kind of explore and identify within like the Two-Spirit culture?
I think that there is. I think there's a lot of, since Two-Spirit is an umbrella term for so many different nations, forms of different genders outside of the Western binary, then I think that there is this accessibility again with social media and with being able to reconnect with folks. Say if you're not in your communities, then I feel like social media, of course, is a good accessible way to interact with people. But even then, there's still somewhat of a barrier that we're fighting with colonization, of course, in being able to even access or find elders that remember and can share the knowledge that they have in regards to the genders outside of male and female. I think that there's a lot of reckoning when it comes to cis Native folks, in that not everyone, I recently did a TEDx talk as well, and I talked about how not everyone is always going to be safe, let alone tolerant. Even though we might be family or we might be from the same nation, it's not always going to be safe. And there are these conversations going on within nations and within indigenous communities as well about going back to what is truly traditional versus Christian ideas that have been put upon us about what it means to be who we are.
Yeah, we've certainly seen a lot of that. Actually, just very recently, the Kamloops, one of the bigger festivals in BC, got a lot of criticism. And yeah, I wish that's a whole other story. It's not great.
Totally.
Hopefully there will be more progress.
But I do appreciate the sort of pushback that the Native community, especially the Two-Spirit community, has in terms of the memes and the jokes that they throw at them.
It was wonderful seeing the kind of pushback. If there's other young trans Two-Spirit folks, what would you tell them in respect to like how to do art and how to best express themselves? And what can they do? I know you're only 26. Here's your sage wisdom, but yeah.
Yeah, I think to any young Two-Spirit indigenqueer folks, I think that just doing your art and starting from that place of simply getting it out is going to be the biggest thing that you can do. I personally can sometimes waffle on doing things, and I know that I at times pull back and listen and wait and absorb things. But I've had to realize within myself when I am doing that to make sure that I'm learning in the right place versus just sort of holding back because of the fear of what if something doesn't go right, or just the fear of taking that next step. And I think similarly with masculinity, there's this expectation that you just go for it, you know what you want, that has pushed me into being able to recognize how much I do know myself after a lot of reflection and contemplation.
Yeah, certainly. We've had a pretty tough year in terms of prides and everything. I'm just wondering, do you have anything that lets you hold on to hope? And
I think that for me, the thing that really brings about hope is some of the songs that I have that have been shared with me, both Two-Spirit and not, as well as one of the projects that I released. It was a comic called Qualifications of Being, released February 2020 with, about 100 folks in attendance, friends and family. And so that huge gathering of people definitely has stuck with me through these past few years in realizing the love and support that is out there, even though not everyone has that in their communities because of so many different levels of trauma, generational trauma that people are going through. But I think that being able to look at the things that people are doing for the people and being able to connect with different artists and different folks who are doing work in their communities or even just for themselves to keep themselves going, I think has been the thing that really motivates me, as well as just generally checking in with people who care about me.
So where can people find out more information about you and your projects?
So they can find my projects and some of the stuff that I do either at ravenandrelatives.com or Raven and Relatives on Instagram and Facebook, or my personal page, Raven_TWO_feathers, and that's my Instagram.
Great. So yeah, your film's going to be available Out on Screen, and it's going to be virtual, and it's part of the Two-Spirit and Indigenqueer Cinema Sovereign Bodies piece. And I noticed that tickets are as low as $5, and you can get them from outonscreen.com. That was Raven Two Feathers.
Thank you so much for having me to Igwidsid.
And up next here is our interview of Keffels, also known as Clara Sorrenti. This is still an evolving story. I've requested the London Police policies and procedures relating to trans people. This is something I can just get from like the website of Vancouver Police or Toronto Police or a bunch of different police departments around the country. London police have stated that I need to make a Freedom of Information request and pay some money to get access to these documents. So we're going to do that. And one interview we couldn't fit in today was with another trans person in London who was also talking about being misgendered and dead named by police, even though they had changed their legal name many, many years before. One thing that stuck out to me in that interview was I asked whether it's an accident that this could have happened to Clara, and the answer was very clearly no. So we'll have that next week. So here's Keffels. So I'm part of a show called GenderQueeries. We've been airing on Co-op Radio, 100.5 FM for like 30 years. And we're one of the
30
oldest,
years?
yeah, like one of the oldest queer and trans shows in Canada.
Holy I didn't even know.
Yeah. Like when they first started the station, they basically got a building and like the whole like second floor was full of like bird crap. They had to go shovel it all out. It's a really cool story because it's so community, it's so grassroots, and it's broadcasting out of the downtown east side in Vancouver. So yeah, we have always a strong connection to that community.
Did you say that you were the organizer for the Trans March in Vancouver for years?
Yeah, for a little while, yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's been really fun. This year we just had a kind of a chill thing. I wasn't really doing much this year, but we have like super big turnout. 3,000-4,000 people show up. It's just, I don't know. I'm a little old. Like I came out, 15 years ago, and like there was no trans people basically, and like now there's a fence we can go to, and there's like 4,000 of us in the streets. Just like, yep, we're kind of like a big number.
Yeah.
So.
I remember that. Even in 2011, it felt like there was no trans people.
Yeah, I was at one of like the first trans marches here in Vancouver, and like it was like 200 people. But now it's grown, and really kind of cool community building experience. So yeah. If people want to find out more in Vancouver, try transpridevancouver.wordpress.com. We talked a little bit earlier, and like I was saying, I've been doing this show for about 8 years, and I've been reaching out to people, and this is literally the second time ever I've had trans people want to use like aliases because they're afraid of retaliation from the cops. Like someone used the word retribution, and like the only other case was like in the middle of nowhere in like super redneck Texas. So it's just really, really bizarre.
I came out when I was 16, and when I was a teenager, I ran a youth support group for trans people. And I realized the value in these kinds of spaces and providing a space for younger trans people, because it's fucking scary, especially like having to come out in high school is a really terrible, terrible experience.
Yeah.
But with all this groomer hysteria, I may as well be like a combination of Hitler and Satan, like rolled into one.
Yeah, no, certainly. And like you get deranged amounts of hate. It's it seems to me like a lot of trans people in London, Ontario are really afraid of the cops. They're really worried about retaliation. And I don't know, like I've been doing interviews for basically a decade now, and it's like literally the second time. People are actually like legit afraid, and I mean everyone's a little afraid, but the fire comes out and people are willing to fight.
I think it's just London is historically a pretty bad city in terms of hate. It was the city that both the Canadian KKK and the Canadian Nazi Party were founded, so there's a really big stronghold for the far right in this city.
Yeah, and you had the human rights complaint with the mayor refusing to do the proclamation. So it sounds like there's a lot of like activism and history here.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You've basically talked about what has happened with a bunch of other people. I don't think we need to kind of rehash that. But you got your stuff back. You're streaming. Was there anything damaged?
No, everything seems to be fine. I got my phone working like as soon as I got home, and I got back into my Twitter account. I haven't turned on my other computer yet, because I just wanted to get streaming right away and do a little stream because I missed it.
Yeah. Do you think this outcome, like you getting your stuff back, the police chief making a statement, do you think that would have been the same without the support of people online?
No.
Yeah.
No, they would not have given a single shit unless I did what I did, they wouldn't have cared.
Yeah. That's definitely the impression I'm getting when it comes to like talking to other people in London, and it's really stunning. I'm not sure if you know, but like Ontario kind of set a lot of the groundwork for a lot of the human rights legislation, a lot of the human rights precedents in terms of trans people and arrests and dealing with police and prisoners and strip searches and everything like that. And so I don't know. I find it really like we're talking about how London has a history, but and I mean, police departments all over Ontario have a history of not updating their policies or being forced to update their policies. And this is like stuff going back to like 2006, 2002. Like the Ontario Chiefs of Police put out policy guides. And I don't know, what does it feel like? You're in 2022. There's been cases where like human rights courts have been like, yeah, police departments need to put in policies. And it doesn't sound like London police have policies. Or at least if they have them, they're not releasing them. I presume you haven't gotten anything? They haven't told you what their policies regarding like designating trans people are?
No, they've just been putting out cookie cutter statements.
Yeah.
I was even shocked that the police like the chief of the police was willing to admit that that was something that happened. But I would have also liked for them to drop me as a suspect and acknowledge all of the things that were more of a threat to my life than just disrespecting my identity.
Yeah. They show up. They talk to your mom first. Yeah. And your mom's supposed to be dead in this like alternate reality because you killed them. Mm-hmm. But they still stick a rifle in your face.
Yep.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah. It's a really scary thought, though, because, like, anyone could have done what the person did to me. Right. All you have to do is make a burner email with someone's name in it, post an image of a gun, say, oh, I'm going to go kill a bunch of and insert whatever group, and you'll get swatted. You'll get your house raided. It's insane.
And then they show up and they see it's not true, and they still stick rifles in people's faces. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess a question, like I did bring up like strip searches and stuff before. Did they? And I haven't seen that in any of the articles I've read. Did they like do a very invasive search? Did they?
No, they didn't.
Okay. They kind of realized, well, there's no point. They realized at that point they had screwed up.
Yeah, I'm also just wondering if it was because like I was literally sleeping. I got woken up by the police. I was wearing pajamas the entire time I was in custody.
Yeah. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
I was actually reading the Ontario Chief of Police Guide to Policing Our Communities, and one quote they have is, trust and trusting relationships are critical to the success of police services, regarding both organization members and the communities we serve. And I'm just kind of wondering if you have any comment on that.
I don't actually know very many people in the city of London, Ontario who trust the police.
Yeah. It's not just trans people who don't trust them.
And you want to know the craziest thing. So this didn't end up being a part of any of the stories because they were more focused on me. But one of the people who helps me with making content, my graphic artist, he also got swatted only a couple days before what happened. Except he lives in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
So they did the same thing, email, impersonation, I'm going to kill a bunch of people, send the emails off to Congress people. The police show up at the door. They figure out it was a fake email and they leave. No one got guns pointed at them. No one had their stuff stolen. It's insane to think the Texas police were in better shape to deal with swatting than police in like this so-called progressive liberal paradise of Canada.
Yeah, or at least Ontario, right?
Yeah. Catboy Collector, who I'm talking about, lives in Austin, not Houston. I'm so sorry.
Okay. But yeah, like you approached the London police and you said, hey, I've been swatted in Toronto, or someone tried to swat me in Toronto. I'm worried about it being happening here. And they just blew you off, right?
I didn't actually communicate that to the London police. I guess I just assumed that they would have communicated that themselves. When I ended up calling the Toronto police on July 31st, they told me that... No, not on July 31st. That was when we first had contact and they told me about this incident. But the day after, when I finally got my stuff back and I contacted them, They told me there was no correspondence between Toronto Police Services and London Police Services.
Yeah, you'd think that they'd contact the place where you live, right?
Yeah,
But,
they did.
so, I mean, in Ontario, I guess there has been a bit of a change of political climate lately. And I'm just kind of wondering if you can speak to that, what's happened over the last couple of years, specifically in Ontario.
At least in London, I've been hearing that there's been a lot of skirmishes, specifically between the growing immigrant community and the police. London is a city that has grown a lot. It's taken in a lot of new immigrants, even like proportionately to other Ontario cities. I can't really speak for the political climate in other cities in Ontario because I'm not as on the ground as someone like you. Much respect though. But I know that there's not a very trusting relationship between a large portion of the population of London and the police.
I know you've seen basically in the London area, you've seen pride flags being burned and torn down. We've had like drag queen story times attacked repeatedly around the country. We had an issue here in Richmond, which is basically Vancouver. Like even in Vancouver Pride, we had trans people being attacked by bigots. We're seeing everything happening in the States. It's been a super tough year. So what keeps you going? And I mean, I love your quote. If they want me to stop, the next time they better manipulate the police into pulling the trigger. I freaking love that quote.
I think we have to. Because our community is under attack, not just in the United States or the United Kingdom or Canada, everywhere. And unless we fight back and give it all we got and try and put aside petty differences and work together, we will lose everything.
Yeah, and just definitely working together with other people in the LGBTQI community as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what gives you the fire?
I guess it's I think it's anger, honestly. It's that I remember coming out in 2011 and things are worse now than they were then. Yeah. And there are so many young trans people who are part of the community I've built online who are coming out into this, where this is just their reality and they're scared and they need support, and I want to be there for them.
Yeah. And you've done a lot of fundraising. You've done a lot of good work.
I try to do my best.
I've done a lot of race showing, which is fun. This show takes kind of a bit of a policy nerd approach. Like, I can go look at Vancouver police policies, Toronto police policies, Hamilton police policies. All that stuff is public and available on their website. And so what kind of message do you think it sends when London police are forcing people to pay money and go through like a super drawn out long FOI process, like a freedom of information process, to get copies of things like how London police are expected to treat trans people?
It's ridiculous. This is part of the reason I needed to take the approach that I did, because they won't do anything unless they feel pressured to do it.
Yeah. I keep seeing people who they're like, oh, we'll join the LGBTQ group as part of the, the community feedback group as part of the local police. But I never see that amount to anything. Like, not in Vancouver, not in Toronto. It seems it's all like litigation. It always has to be like controversial.
I don't know. It was like what I said to the London Free Press today. Like, I don't have any faith in their internal mechanisms. I do not think change comes from within when it comes to the police. I think people need to stand up against them and make them change if we want to see any sort of progress.
We're only a couple months from Tidor, and I'm guessing they're going to try to host another flag raising like they did in the past. I don't know. Any thoughts on that? Like, should there be a protest?
I definitely feel like it's a publicity stunt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious. They won't even give out their policies without a Freedom of Information Act request.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then in the case with me, they put me in their system with my dead name, despite the fact that my name has been legally changed for over 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, how do you fuck up that badly? I don't understand.
It's hard to believe that it was an accident, right?
Yeah.
And of course, now if you ever want to go to the States, they're going to ask you, have you ever been arrested? And you're like, yep. And so this kind of has like serious ramifications for your travel. And there isn't a I was arrested, but they dropped charges. Like, that doesn't matter to the border cops, right? Like,
Yeah, which also means now that it's like if I have to travel and they say that, I'll have to like pull up like a CBC article or something and out myself as trans.
Yeah.
And then depending on the prejudice of the border guard, I don't know what's going to happen. That's been one of the most frustrating things, I think, that I wish more people understood who are more critical of me before I got into doing what I did this year. I kept my head down. Barely anyone really knew I was trans or cared. And I basically gave up any sort of safety I could have in order to advocate for the community.
Yeah, certainly no question of that. So yeah, is there any plans on the horizon? Anything you're planning on doing? I mean, keeping this up, keeping this in the news cycle, I guess. I mean, for as long as you can.
Yeah, I don't even know yet. I'm still getting more requests for interview, but I don't know what's gonna happen. Every day takes me by surprise. I only got unbanned on Twitch 3 days before I got swatted. So it just everything comes so fast. Really, at this point, what I just want to do is try and take it easy and take care of myself, which is not something I've done a very good job at. Basically, ever since I got swatted, I'm like, okay, I need to do something. Like, I literally, I stayed up for 30 hours straight preparing my response to what happened.